Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Folklore and Stuff. Today's episode is called Unicorns, What Are They? And we'll be doing a somewhat deep dive on unicorns. So, what are unicorns? I'm sure almost everyone listening has heard of a unicorn at least once. Growing up, I remember seeing them on shirts, lunchboxes, backpacks, diaries. Basically, they were everywhere. Unicorns were a huge thing in the 2010s, and while they might not be as popular anymore, I've personally never stopped thinking about them. But have you ever stopped to wonder where unicorns actually came from? Because when you look into their history, they really weren't always the glittery rainbow creatures that we imagine today. In fact, the original descriptions are honestly kind of weird. Originally, unicorns were described as wild animals, sometimes being compared to a donkey or wild ass, known for being incredibly fast and impossible to catch. Ancient writers described them as having a horn a cubit and a half long, and if you're like me and had absolutely no idea what a cubit is, don't worry, I already Googled it for you. A cubit is around 27 inches. That's over 2 feet long, not exactly the delicate horn we can picture now. The idea of a unicorn has actually existed since antiquity, antiquity, meaning somewhere between the 8th century BC and 5th century AD. Ancient Greek writers believed unicorns were real animals living in India. To the Greeks, India seemed distant, mysterious, and just unknown, so stories about strange creatures from there sounded believable. What's interesting is that unicorns weren't originally part of Greek mythology. They were included in natural history, meaning people thought they actually existed. Some ancient descriptions are honestly all over the place. One writer described a one horned horse with the head of a stag. Another described an animal with the head of a stag, the feet of an elephant, the tail of a boar, and the body of a horse, and a very long black horn. Apparently, it also made a deep lowing noise, which I think is like a growl. So, instead of the beautiful white horse galloping through clouds, dancing on rainbows, early unicorns kind of sounded more like an alien or a strange creature someone invented after seeing like a bunch of animals at once. A lot of historians think these stories may have come from travelers exaggerating animals they saw in Asia, especially rhinoceroses. If you think about it, a rhino from far away could absolutely sound mythical to someone who'd never seen one before. Imagine trying to explain a rhino to people back home thousands of years ago, and the only animals you have around are like cows and maybe a bull, some chickens, a sheep. You don't have rhinos in Europe. Pretty crazy. But over time, the unicorns started changing. By the Middle Ages in Europe, unicorns became symbols of purity, innocence, and chastity. According to medieval folklore, only a virgin could capture a unicorn. Artists and religious writers used unicorn imagery in paintings, stories, and tapestries to represent purity and holiness. This version of the unicorn is a lot closer to the one we recognize today. As centuries passed, the darker, stranger descriptions slowly disappeared, and the softer, fantasy version became more popular. Unicorns became elegant white horses with flowing manes and magical powers. Eventually, they became connected with childhood, imagination, and fairy tales. Another huge reason why unicorns kind of exploded in popularity was because of children's media. One major example of this would be the My Little Pony franchise, which helped shape the colorful pastel unicorn aesthetic for an entire generation. Instead of mysterious wild beasts, unicorns became cute, friendly, and magical creatures. Then came the internet. During the 2010s, unicorns were everywhere online. There was unicorn makeup, unicorn slime, unicorn clothing, unicorn phone cases, and even unicorn food. Bright pastel colors, glitter, rainbows, sparkles, and sprinkles became a huge aesthetic trend on social media platforms like Instagram and Tumblr. Companies realized that people loved the fantasy and nostalgia connected to unicorns. So suddenly, everything became unicorn themed. One of the biggest examples was the famous unicorn frappuccino released by Starbucks in 2017. It was bright pink and blue, covered in sugary powder, and basically designed to go viral online. People posted photos of it everywhere, but whether people actually like the taste, it's kind of another story. But visually, it fit perfectly into the unicorn trend. And side note on that, my mom never let me get the unicorn frappuccino because of the amount of sugar that was in it. So I missed out on that, and I'm still upset. A lot of researchers connect the rise of unicorn culture to internet consumerism and digital media. The idea of cuteness became extremely marketable. Bright colors, fantasy aesthetics, and nostalgic designs sold well online because they were eye catching and shareable. Unicorns became less about mythology and purity and holiness and chastity, and more about branding and identity. But despite all these changes, the unicorn has somehow stayed relevant for thousands of years. Very few mythical creatures have transformed so much while still remaining recognizable. The unicorn went from being a possibly real animal in ancient natural history to a medieval religious symbol to a children's fantasy character to an internet aesthetic. I think that says a lot about culture in general. Stories evolve depending on what people value at the time. Ancient societies valued mystery and exploration. Medieval Europe valued purity and religion. And modern internet culture values creativity, nostalgia, and visual aesthetics. The unicorn changed to reflect all of those things. So even though the giant unicorn craze of the 2010s has mostly faded away, I don't think unicorns themselves will ever truly disappear. People are always going to be drawn to the idea that there might be something magical hidden inside an otherwise ordinary world. And honestly, maybe that's the real reason unicorns have survived for so long. Not because people believed they were real, but because people wanted them to be real.